evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joseph Malcarney. I am the Zoning Board Chairman, and I am calling this meeting to order. It's 6:32 p.m. And I would ask that my colleagues introduce themselves, starting at my left.
Russell Tompkins.
Charlie Cannon.
Daniel Vonderink.
John Calogero.
Frank McMahon.
Ron Mostello.
And just as a reminder to the board, when we're talking, feel free to use the buttons and push that so everyone else can hear as well.
You could tell that whoever coming, there's chairs, there's more chairs there.
Yes, and for those that are coming, there's more chairs. It's going to be a busy place here, so find places to sit and make yourself welcome. On the agenda for this evening, we have the Popolo area variance, the Brown area variance, and the 6th sense interpretation that we'll be doing. Have all adjoining property owners been notified and fees paid?
Yes.
Okay. And the meeting is being recorded and broadcast on YouTube.
And Channel 22 local.
And Channel 22 local. So to begin, well, maybe just a couple of housekeeping. If you notice over here, there's a sign for the restrooms. If you need to use the restrooms, they're going to be down the stairs, and you'll kind of have to walk around to find them. I'm not sure if there's signs once you get down there. And any comments that we have, we're going to go through, as I mentioned, the 3 area variances, well, the 2 area variances and the interpretation. Any comments or questions? We're going to open the public hearing for each of them. All comments are to be addressed to the board, and I'll review this again in a little bit. So to begin with, we have the Popolo area variance. So those that are free to come forward, let's have a seat right here in the front. And am I pronouncing that right, Popolo? Okay, great. So if you would start by kind of explaining to us why you're here, and yeah, we'll need to.
You could just take it off and.
Yeah, you can take it off and hold it. Yeah, that'll be easier for you. And what we can do for you.
No.
Brandon, can you hear the microphone?
Yeah, you kind of have to talk into it. I think it's on. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just kind of talk directly into it.
We're just applying for a variance to build a garage.
Okay, garage variance. All right, and are you looking for particular setbacks, or maybe you can?
I'll give you a little bit more detail in terms of background. First of all, Mr. Lovell, I know I had the opportunity to meet you on site. Appreciate that, but more importantly, it's nice to have both applicants here. Not necessarily necessary, but I know the board appreciates always having the applicants available, so thank you for attending. The application is for an additional accessory structure on the property. I did visit the parcel. It's 37 plus acres. The planning board met, reviewed the application, and if you don't mind, Joseph, I'll go into their review.
Great.
To a certain degree, anyway. Planning board met on February 6th and resolved that the planning board is making a recommendation for approval to the Town of Clinton Zoning Board of Appeals on the requested area variance from A4, Section 250-22 accessory structures for the construction of a 39-foot by 26-foot barn for the property owned by Jonathan Popolo and Nicole Scala, located at 205 East Falk Hill Road, tax grid number ending in 819678 in the AR5 zone. Several factors which I won't take up everyone's time reading because they're duplicated in my motion. Planning board resolved to provide a positive recommendation for approval to the Town of Clinton Zoning Board of Appeals with a question to the board, and this is what the heart of the matter is here. The question is, does the property require an additional variance, or is the barn/gym incorporated into the pool area truly a pool/pool house? So, that is the question that I think we as a board will need to discuss and settle on. There was a letter issued by the Municipal Code Enforcement Officer to the owners, the applicants, which details the existing structures. The principal dwelling unit one existing barn, which for all intents and purposes, we'll call that a gym at this point, a second barn, which is a two-story structure, a pool, and an existing goat shed. So basically 4 existing structures. The question comes down to, is one of the 4, could it be characterized as a pool house? Do we want to discuss that at this point? Do we want to?
Yeah, or why don't you finish whatever you're
So-
presenting, and it's one of the topics of discussion.
While there is precedent for considering the structure adjacent to the pool, a pool house, and combining those 2 entities as one, I'm not quite certain it's applicable here for several reasons. And you could go both ways here. The existing building, the gable end side of it actually creates one part of the border of the pool fence. There are pool, as I think I stated in my motion, there are pool-related items in the structure. There's a sauna in the structure, there's a hot water heater that's used for showering, presumably since it's proximity to the pool. You know, when you go in or out of the pool, you're using that shower. For me, Dennis and I did some measuring. We come up with about 25% of the building could be construed as related to the pool. However, that leaves 75%, which definitely is not related to the use or the operation of the pool. Basically storage for hay, equipment, etc. So in my opinion, I think it would suit the applicant and the board to consider that this is, in fact, not a pool house. But then we come to the question of being well over the number of accessory structures allowed per the Town of Clinton zoning code. So all of that said, I think it would be prudent and probably practical to consider expanding the motion to incorporate the existing structures and the proposed structure in the one motion, consider granting that variance simply to prevent the additional burden of the planning board, the zoning board, the applicants, et cetera, to ultimately wind up probably at the same conclusion, maybe weeks or months down the road.
Sorry.
Uh-oh.
I'm trying to tell you guys, sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So that's the way I approached it for the motion. See what you all think as a board, and we'll
Yeah.
take it from there.
Charlie,
You know, we have had a number of cases,
can you hit the power? Yeah. There you go.
particularly on older parcels in town. You know, 2 of the barns are probably 100, 140 years old. And, you know, on a 5-acre parcel, 3 accessory structures is a lot. On a 35-acre parcel, it looks like it's about 300 feet from the road to the house. So on a 35-acre parcel, 3 accessory structures is not uncommon, particularly when 2 of them are old barns. And I mean, I've always been concerned that, you know, if we adhere to this, the reason that people come for a variance request is because of the special conditions of the property. And if we adhere to the 3 restriction, they might have to tear down a couple of old historic barns to put up what they need. Often those older structures are not really meeting the current owner's needs. So we certainly have had previous cases where we have granted variances to expand the number of accessory structures.
Any other discussion, comments from the board? All right, I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Any comments from the public at this time for this application? Okay. I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Further discussion from the board?
Seems prudent to
it seems prudent to follow Ron's suggestion, rather than try to figure out what percentage of that building is a pool house and what percentage is not, because it runs with the property, and we don't really know how that use is going to be maintained through the years.
All right, any other further discussion? Ron, your motion.
Okay, bear with me, everyone, it's a little lengthy, but I'll get through it as quickly as I can. I hereby motion that the Town of Clinton Zoning Board of Appeals approve the requested area variance to Section 250-22 accessory structures to allow construction of a detached garage as requested by Jonathan Papalau and Nicole Scala, located at 205 East Falkhill Road, tax grid number ending in 819678 in the AR5 district. Additionally, I request that the Town of Clinton Zoning Board of Appeals expand the variance to encompass the 4 existing accessory structures to bring the parcel in compliance with Section 250-22. Whereas, number 1, the applicants currently have 4 accessory structures on the parcel. The maximum allowed per Town of Clinton code is 3. The applicants wish to add another, that being a 39-foot by 26-foot barn requiring an area variance from A4 Section 250-22 re-accessory structures. Number 2, the 4 existing accessory structures are identified as follows: the barn/gym, barn, pool, and goat shed. Number 3, while one of the barn structures could conceivably be interpreted as a pool house because of its proximity to the existing pool, a small portion of the building, under 25%, houses nominally related pool use items, and the majority of the remainder of the building is used for storage and is separated from the pool area. Number 4, while the barns likely predate any other structure on the parcel, the goat shed was recently constructed and should have required a variance under Section 250-22, but due to human error, it was granted a building permit NCO. Number 5, the 37.8 acre parcel is in the AR5 zoning district. Number 6, the property is not within an ag district or a CEA. 7, it is noted that an area variance is a type 2 action under SECRA and requires no further action. 8, the site is on a Clinton Scenic Historic Road, that being East Falkhill Road, and must conform to local law number 3 of 2001. 9, an undesirable change will not be produced in the character of the neighborhood or be detrimental to nearby properties. 10, the benefits sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by any other feasible method without the variance, given each of the structures complement the property and serve specific necessary purposes. 11, the proposed variance should not have an adverse effect or impact on the physical and environmental condition of the neighborhood. 12, the alleged difficulty is self-created but should not necessarily preclude the granting of the area variance, considering the limited impact on surrounding conditions. 13, there are no known outstanding zoning violations. 14, a consent authorization is on file with the clerk for Dennis Loveland. One condition, that all fees have been paid.
Second for discussion.
Second?
Okay, any further discussion?
The property has been cleaned up and improved through the years. I remember passing it some years ago, and I personally would hate to see those historic barns be removed and be lost forever. And they seem to be maintaining them probably at great expense, so I would much rather see the extra structure.
Thank you. Any other further discussion? Okay, Russ, your vote.
Aye.
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 And my vote is aye. So your variance with one condition has been granted. So, thank you. Thank you. Yep. Okay, then the next one that we have is the Brown area variance for the shed. Come on up. Yeah. So you've just kind of seen kind of what happened. So if you can kind of state, why you're here and what we can do to help you. And then if you try to use the microphone, I know it may be difficult.
Here to apply for a variance. All right, is everything
Is
okay?
it? Yeah,
Make sure the switch is on.
Can you hear okay?
So
Okay,
he's
great.
talking tonight.
All right, I'll stay up close, I should know better. I'm here to apply for a variance for a tool shed. And the property is 99 Willow Lane. And we're approximately, the variance requires 75 foot on either side. Excuse me, thanks for that. And we're at 50 feet, so we need a variance.
Okay. All right, great. So, Russ, you want to take it away?
All right, I visited property a couple of times because I had some questions. I will point out that the gentleman just said 50 feet. In the original variance request, it said 35 feet for the rear, and Jeff Newman's letter of denial says 52 feet. I spoke to the applicant, and he indicated that actually it was 52 feet is what they were looking for.
Okay.
So it's 52 feet. Like I say, examined the property. I actually took a steel 100-foot tape over and did some measuring, and according to my calculations, it requires two variances. It will require the back variance that they're requesting, but it also requires a variance to the front because it's supposed to be 100 feet to the center of the road, and when I measured it off, I came up with 126 feet, I believe. So the back variance would be 52 feet, front variance would be down to, I believe, 85 feet I have in my notes here. It also is in a wetland area, or the buffer to it. The buffer required there is 50 feet. The applicant has been to the planning board this week, Tuesday night, and they have declared themselves the lead on this program for the wetland permit. So that is in the process also. I will say that I think that I was a little left out on the application because on the page 2 where it says enclosed with this application of following a plot plan drawn to scale including 1 lot dimensions, 2 existing buildings and distances, 3 existing well and waste, 4 significant features, 5 proposed structures and distance to boundary lines, well and waste facilities, north arrow, surrounding properties, owners' names and roads, and all accessory structures, none of which I had in my package here. So numerous items were missing in the application, which made it a little difficult. There was pictures taken with indications in like a red marker, but
If you'd like, I have copies for everybody.
Yeah, that'd be,
For the wetlands, what happens is there's 2 applications.
well, they should have been with the application when it was submitted.
This is the correct application, site plan.
okay?
I want to share it,
Yeah.
just so you have something. And if you look at the page 2 and page 3, you can see the wetland areas that are marked as well. So that's right off the Dutchess County map. And that's so I think this is what Russ is talking, he didn't get.
No, there is one like that, it's the smaller one. Did you click on the
Yeah,
link
it's,
that I sent
it was
earlier?
in the packet.
Arlene, that was all under the wetland.
Yeah.
Apparently, there was something submitted, maybe to the planning board, but as I said, it wasn't with this area variance
It's
request.
on the wetlands, this is the variance.
I see.
So whether we think that is a fact that it's going to prevent this or not, I don't know, but that should have all been in the package. As I said, I viewed the property. The planning board did meet on Tuesday, the 20th, I believe, on this, and I have their letter from them, and it says, Mr. Farini motioned that the Town of Clinton Planning Board is making a neutral recommendation, and they have the setback at 50, and I said, according to mine, it's going to be 52. The applicant is requesting the area variance to construct tool shed property is 2.3 acre in the AR5 zone. It's not within the ridgeline scenic or historic preservation overlay district. Site is not in a critical environmental area. The variance is to reduce the yard setback from rear. They have here front yard setback. That's the rear yard setback, so there's an error in that there. I'm changing that to rear. Rear yard setback from 75 to 50 feet is not substantial. Appears the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other method.
They are unable to determine the proposed variance would have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood. The alleged difficulty is self-created and that the benefit can be achieved by some other method but should not necessarily preclude it. Therefore, the planning board is making a neutral recommendation. So that was from the planning board. My own observation of the site is it's apparent that there's been considerable activity in this either wetland or 50-foot buffer area. You can see where there's been excavation and mounds of dirt and ditches that are full of water, and that's a concern, a factor there. I see on this most recent thing, it shows two driveways going into it, which is a surprise to me today, because I wasn't aware of two driveway entrances to the one location here. It appeared to me that it would be possible that the shed could be moved closer to the blue barn that's there and avoid the wetland buffer area. But as I said, that's before the planning board. He's applied for a permit to disturb the wetland. So, that's about all I can say on it.
Okay, further discussion from the board? All right.
Russ, I know the property, and to your point, there has been a lot of activity there, but I noticed there appears to be what I would call like a small pond with some plantings around it that is not on this document, or the...
Yeah, there's a small pond. I would characterize it as what I would call a frog pond. I don't think it's more than
It's
10, 15
Yeah, I was gonna say
feet in
150, 200
diameter.
square feet, but I don't know how it relates to the driveway, now driveways, or maybe that driveway is what I guess I would call the existing driveway.
Well, it looked like that second driveway further up the hill, it looked like it would be going through that
Right in it.
area
Yeah.
where that pond is.
So this, I guess my point is, this doesn't appear to be accurate.
Can you shed some clarification about that?
To be clear, what you're indicating, the vegetation is.
Well, I guess if you wouldn't mind, just tell me where the pond is.
Sure. As I said, I wouldn't really call it a pond, but it is an area where there is water.
Well, the whole area. has
Oh,
water.
no, yeah, this is just a printout thing, you can't see it, so here, you got your printout just looks bad, sorry. Hopefully it's more apparent. That's just a color error, it looks like. So this is all,
So would that, the little, for
Yes.
lack of a better term, pond be in here somewhere?
no, right here. So this is actually, the designated wetland area kind of comes in here a little bit. And then, but this whole area is water right now. So yeah. Does that help you?
No, it actually confuses me a little bit more, because I think what Russ and I are referencing is much closer to the road,
This is all, this is the street.
right?
This is existing vegetation. This is an on-ramp and an off-ramp. This is existing water, this kind of blue-gray area. This is the shed, that we're requesting the variance
Okay.
on.
Okay, so are we kind of splitting hairs then, that, if Russ and I are calling it a pond, would you consider that a lower area that just has standing water in it right now?
No, there's no water in there now. That's just vegetation in there. There's just plants in there.
But is it,
Pond,
Is that what you're looking at?
one spot that looked like it.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah, there you go. Right, so this is what we're looking at here. This is all vegetation, and this
Okay.
is the water area in the back. So this is the back end, and this is the
so
back end
this
here.
body of water, small as it may be, is all the way,
Yeah, it may be larger because there was more water when it was drawn, but it might have been a drier period, but that's what we're looking at here.
so there's, yeah, I guess, well, it's hard to make out, there's existing, like, deer fence,
That's right, all along the street here.
but there's an opening in that fence for access.
No longer, when we stopped work order, we just put fence along the entire thing.
Okay. So would that be here, where the
Yes.
opening was?
Along the entire street, that's right. There are no
Where was the opening?
On these two sides, we had,
There were two openings.
that's right.
Okay, okay. All right, thank you.
Yes. Okay. All right. Ron, do you have any other further questions or comments?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay. Charlie?
This is a pre-existing non-conforming lot. It's smaller than the minimum lot required for an AR5 district, and so variance requests are really common for these lots. I measured, just using parcel access, the distance from the center of the road to the back line is less than 200 feet, and so there's sort of a 25-foot strip right down the middle where you could, without a variance, put your shed. But one of the bedrock principles of a variance request is whether there is a feasible means to do the work. That's also a bedrock principle of our wetland law, which is to minimize any disturbance in the wetland or the buffer. And so, this clearly encroaches on the wetland and the buffer. I guess I was a little surprised at the extent of the hard surface that's planned throughout this. For a fairly small tool shed, there are two driveways and a very large parking area, all of which look to me, we would clearly prefer a strict aerial view so that we can see distances. This perspective view makes it a little hard. All of which looks like a great deal of disturbance in the buffer of a wetland when it's not obvious that this could not be accomplished on another part of the property that wouldn't encroach on the wetland buffer. So that's my concern.
The area was being, I mean, we've tried to rehabilitate it. It was being used for commercial waste because it was it had never been cared for over the decades. So over the last 15 years, we've, it's been overrun with poison ivy, which is an invasive plant, and there is a procedure for getting rid of it that I've followed to the letter. I'm a landscape designer, so I'm pretty aware of what these things will do. It taken over the existing vegetation, and we've supplemented that with native plants throughout. So, I mean, we're continue to do that. But the existing area, sorry.
But that doesn't speak to whether you now need to put all that hard surface in a shed in a wetland or a wetland buffer. I mean,
okay, we're not in the wetland, and the buffer is how long? It's
50. It's either 50 or 100 feet, and it's not clear because we just simply don't have sufficient mapping to know.
What I submitted?
Yeah, but it's just not. It's not to scale and strictly.
Not my drawing.
Yeah.
The Duchess
Yeah.
maps. Those
Right.
are not my drawings.
Right.
So those indicate exactly where the.
Can I ask for help from, let's see, I could look up our wetland law. Where does the buffer go from 50 to 100? How big?
It's below so many acres. I looked it up the other day.
And I don't know the area of that one NWI wetland. We need, this would be taken care of in the planning board. One half? Yeah, and then so over 5 goes to 100, so within 50 feet, but here, draw a 50-foot buffer around here. Yeah, thank you. And so there's still a lot of this project encroaches on that 50-foot buffer. And so my question to you is there an alternative that could have achieved your objectives here without going into the wetland?
Sure. So that's a question. As someone else mentioned, the entire width of the property at its maximum is about, if you look, you'll see the number there. I think it maxes out at around 150, 160 feet. And the existing structures, the barn, which was a 240-year-old barn that we spent the last 15 years rehabilitating and restoring to its current condition, and the cottage and the house itself are all in that center area. So if there was an area, I'm not sure how. In other words, if I put a shed on either side of any one of those structures, we would still be where we're at, I think.
You know, behind the house and the barn, but away from the buffer, it looks like there's room. You would still need an area variance. You would,
Right.
pretty much anything you do on a
Right, that's
property
what
is
I'm
going
saying.
to need an area variance. But it appears to me, looking at this map, that there are options for you that do not involve moving into the buffer on the wetland. That's my point. And so that's an issue for us. It's also an issue for the planning board to consider.
I don't know, somebody's commenting, I can't hear you.
Because somebody's standing up for the.
Okay, so just, if you could just hold on. Well, there's time for public comment now. Thank you.
There'll be a public comment section, good.
That was just my comment.
Okay. Great. Any other comments or questions from the board?
My concern is trying to make a decision here without really accurate measurements and so forth, which every time this board is presented with anything to do with wetlands, we rely on the planning board's careful examination of the property, and I know engineers get involved and measure things and so forth, and I think I personally need that data before I could make a clear decision, I think.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Clarify a couple things, or maybe ask?
Sure.
So, we, like this area on the property, it's our land. We wanted to do something with it. As my husband said, people were dumping stuff, and, oh, you can't hear me? So, we wanted to do something with this piece of our property, and because my husband's a land designer, he wanted to make it into something beautiful, and that was the best part of it, is that it went from a dumping ground and a swampy area to an area that can be accessed, where things can be planted. I mean, it was going to be sort of a pollinator garden, was actually what we were trying to do. This was all like a beautiful thing. This was not like a commercial endeavor, as I think somebody mentioned at the planning board, that would somehow, give us parking for things that I'm doing with my art business. Like, this is all, has nothing to do with it. I mean, it was a beautiful project, and having access to it enables my husband to drive in and have a shed, which he really needed. So it wasn't just like that we just put this in so that he could then build the shed. I mean, so I just wanted that to be clear.
If you look at the property, again, one of the biggest problems that we have is anyone coming to work on our property or visit is, if we're home, is forced to park on the street. So we have a total of 3, at the max, additional parking spots, primarily for me to load and unload into, tools into our shed. So that would not be, if we've actually had a police at one point threaten to give tickets to people, because there really is no other, and this is true for our neighbors as well. If you look at the map, at that, there is no parking. So that's, yeah.
But going back to your comment, John, about, looking, so you're saying you're looking for perhaps more clarity from the planning board, who's declared lead agency on that, and you would feel more comfortable with that information?
With that information, I think I could make a more informed decision, and they could, very well may be a very insignificant encroachment on the wetlands, and I think we need to know that.
Any other, thoughts from the board about if they feel like that would be helpful? I'm looking at you, Charlie.
Yes, I agree with John.
Okay.
It'd be nice to know exactly where this encroaches and how much.
Okay. Ron, Frank? Yeah.
I'd like to see more.
Ron, are you thinking about it?
Well,
It would help the applicant's case to have a more detailed, more specific map, but I lean very heavily towards what Russ and Charlie said early on, is that there are alternate locations for the structure. If they're willing to invest the time and effort, it would be in everyone's best interest to know exactly where everything is proposed, but I think we'll wind up in the same eventuality.
So are you
Okay.
saying you would be opposed even if we tried to satisfy these gentlemen's wishes?
Well, if I follow the guidelines or the requirements of this board's responsibilities and duties, it is to sort of disseminate those.
Okay.
It's to determine if there are alternatives to a proposal when a variance is needed. And in this case, I mean, quite simply, there appear to be alternatives rather than encroach on the wetland area and the buffer. So I guess, can we leave it to the applicant if they want to do that, or go further with more specific information?
Yeah, we can open the public hearing and then we can leave it
Can I
open.
just ask something else? So, because we met with Dutchess Soil and Water, and we met with the DEC, and we discussed all of this, and then we talked to Jeff Newman at length about what we needed to do and what, like, it's not like this was like a, like, just wing it thing. So, at this point, what it sounded like was that, so the engineer for the town of Clinton needed to come next and look at what the wetland issue was. And so that's already set in motion. So would that give you the information that you're lacking?
I think that's probably, does that sound like what you're looking for, John? So yeah, once we get that information, then that would provide some more clarity as far as, their a professional opinion on this and setbacks and, where things are at, which would be helpful.
Let's give the town an additional $500 for escrow to ensure that would happen
Okay,
today.
great.
So if they determine that, like, if they give you information that, like, alleviates more, like, clarifies all of this and makes it a little less daunting, then would you go with their recommendation? Or would it then still be, like, other thing, like, it's still an issue of...
Well, from what I'm hearing, and maybe Charlie's going to comment on this, why don't you go ahead?
At the very least, this kind of perspective drawing doesn't help us. We need an accurate survey showing the locations of all the buildings, the wetland and the wetland buffer, and the proposed project.
I hear you, but I am very at a loss, is the map for the wetland is...
Yes, but it's got to be on the same drawing.
So you want an overlay?
Oh, yeah, all of it
on
has
top
to be in the
that?
same place so that we can see where you're proposing to do the work and where there are alternatives to
So that's what would be helpful, if you follow what he's saying. Yeah, so,
You want an overlay?
yeah, sort of like this, but you'll have accurate measurements as far as this is, where the driveway is coming in, showing distances from where the wetland buffer is to, or the wetlands and the buffer, to the structure, to the proposed driveway.
A lot of those are there, but some of them are not.
Yeah, if it sounds, again, listening to the board, that would be very helpful information. And
Just for your information, the previous variance that we just acted on, these are all pages that were included, okay? Showing, the distance, showing the boundary lines of the entire property, showing the lengths of it, which I said initially, those things you had checked off, attached, that doesn't suffice,
So if we have something to scale that shows that in detail, that would be very helpful. Okay, any other comments? Okay, I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. At this time, I'd like to hear comments from the public, if there are any. And so, John, are you making comments? Okay. Oh, yeah, please.
Get the microphone, John.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, my name is John Lyons. I'm a land use lawyer. My firm is Grant and Lyons in Rhinebeck. I represent John Cascia, who is an adjacent property owner to the applicant. It's nice to see that the board has kind of zeroed in on what I perceive to be a key issue. I'm here before you tonight to ask you to table this application until there's more information. I think that there are two factors that you have to consider in the statutory test for an area variance that can't be determined right now because you don't have sufficient information. The board's already alluded to one of those, which is that the consideration of a feasible alternative. The other one is impacts to the environment if the application were to be granted. So my client's aware of the fact that the applicant is in front of the planning board right now seeking a wetlands permit to construct the driveway. And we've appeared before the planning board, and the real issue here is that nobody has the information that right now that's necessary to answer the questions about what the impacts of this project are going to be. So we've asked the planning board to require the applicant to get a professional wetlands delineation done so that we can understand exactly what the boundaries are. I know that the board is aware of the fact that, you know, those NWI wetlands boundaries that are on the county tax map can't be used for the kind of work that we're doing. You can't even rely on the parcel lines that are on the county tax map for that. So what those county tax map wetlands are is it puts you on notice that you should probably be drilling down deeper to take a look. So I'm going to put the mic down for a second, and I'm going to give you some maps, and then I'll talk to you about them for a second. So what my firm did is we took a look. You're probably aware of the fact that years ago Hudsonia did a. I want to keep one for myself.
You know, I'll give it. Go ahead.
Okay. Hudsonia did.
Keep one. Sean.
Here, did I give you one?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Biodiversity and one for the applicant too.
Oh, you want to give them?
Hudsonia did a biodiversity study of the town of Clinton, and so those maps are publicly available, and we took a look at those maps, and it appears that the wetlands, this NWI wetlands that's partially on the applicant's property and partially on Mr. Cascia's property is significantly larger as shown on that. So the papers I gave you, this is the terrain version of the county tax map that you're seeing. Okay, and then if you flip to page 2, this is a clip that's taken from the 2021 Hudsonia biodiversity map, significant habitats map, and you'll see that on this map there are 3 areas of wetlands that are indicated. The applicant's property is down here. There's a hardwood swamp wetlands indicated here, a marsh wetlands indicated here, and another hardwood swamp wetlands indicated up here. And you can see that that's significantly larger than the wetlands area that's shown on the county tax map. And you'll also see that the hardwood swamp wetlands down here comes much further, much closer to the road, much closer to the barn than is shown on the county tax map. This isn't definitive, but it was, you know, Hudsonia did go out and look at properties when they were doing the biodiversity study. And so this is the basis for us saying that there's a really good case here for having a professional wetlands delineator go out onto that site and tell everybody where the wetlands boundaries are. The last sheet that's on here is the applicant's perspectives plan And I plotted on that sheet, just with that primitive red line, the areas that could potentially fall within the wetlands. And it
Sorry, John,
covers
sorry. Can you get on the microphone, please?
Sure.
Because you can't hear on TV.
a significant area. And so it's very possible that this shed, the whole thing may be in the wetlands area. And that makes a big difference if you were to be making a decision about what the impacts to the environment are. I mean, I'm a lawyer for a bunch of other ZBAs, and I know that the environmental impact factor isn't that prominent in a lot of area variances, but this is one where it's really, really prominent. And then with regard to the alternate sites, you can't figure out whether there's an alternate site unless we know where the wetland is and we know where the buffer is. And that, the other thing too is that the way you know this already, but your wetland law is drafted in a way that the size of the wetland dictates the size of the buffer. So not knowing the size of the wetland, we don't really know what buffer should apply. So there's just lots and lots of reasons why this really needs to be done. You guys, in our opinion, are not in a position to really be able to make a decision on this. I would like to ask the board, if the applicant keeps the application open, to keep the public hearing open and set this aside. The planning board, as you mentioned, has declared itself to be lead agency under seeker for the wetlands permit. They have also referred the application to the Conservation Advisory Council, and we've sent some of the information that we sent to the planning board off to them. And I think, and we've also advocated for the planning board engaging Hudsonia as a consultant to the planning board, which they can do. Hudsonia's already got a lot of the data. They know Clinton well, and they'll be able to give the planning board information not only about the wetlands, but also really more importantly about how development in these wetlands might have an adverse impact on the resource and on wetlands habitats. So we'd like to have you table the application, hold the public hearing open. If the applicant wants to continue, once we know and understand what the facts are with regard to the wetlands, then we'd like the ability to be able to come back and comment further at that time. The applicant really, following the course of action that I suggest, really won't delay the applicant because, as you know, you can't issue a decision until seeker reaches a certain point up at the planning board. So you can't run ahead of them anyway. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, John. Any questions from the board? Yeah, sure.
Can I ask you, I'm sorry, your name is John?
Yeah,
John
you
what?
just if you just direct the questions to us, and then we can
I'm
ask him
sorry.
to answer the questions.
Okay, well,
Not a
I
problem.
was curious, how much you were paid to be here today, or to take this case on, and if you could name your client.
By name, my client
Yeah, just-
is John Cascio.
Right.
My hourly rate is $295
Okay.
an hour. I don't know how many hours I've spent yet on the work that I prepared.
This is very expensive.
Okay, just want to, thanks for the record.
Here's a copy of, this is a letter that sort of summarizes everything and has all the other maps and has copies in case the board is interested. Sorry, Arlene. There are copies of all of our correspondence that was sent to the planning board and sent to the Conservation Advisory Council.
Thank you, John. Any other questions from the board? No.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you. So, are there any further questions that you have for us? So right now, we're with the board kind of, we're grateful for John's comments, but before that was, requesting you to provide us the detailed information that we're asking, which again, kind of John went over to summarize, that would help us to make an informed decision at that point. The plan is to leave the public hearing open, and so that allows for a couple things. One is future comment, and also it doesn't put the time limit on us giving a determination to you. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, hi, my name is Peter Clapton, actually,
Can you get on the microphone?
I mean, I can talk loud.
Yes, it's unfortunately, it's the,
Can't hear you, sorry.
we're broadcasting it and we,
Sorry, guys.
yeah, take your time.
The microphone could reach you if you don't want to.
My name is Pete Clapton, I actually live in Pleasant Valley.
So right up to the
My
microphone.
name is Peter Clapton, I live in Pleasant Valley.
How'd you spell your last name, sorry?
PLA, V like victory, CHAN like Nancy. I'm a real estate broker, I own the real estate superstore, retired, but I always run into this. I just got here, and I feel for you. Okay, I hear the shed. For all I know, it's an 8 by 10. I don't know how big the machine shed is. But wetlands get often confused in all municipalities. And categories, federal, state, and township. Okay? And they all have different setbacks. Hardwood doesn't grow in a swamp usually, okay? In a wetland, you usually have tall grass. The only reason it's growing in, you got oaks in your wetland is because there's a beaver dam for all the hunters and fishermen. There's a beaver dam downstream that has backed that water up, and we had a hell of a rainy year this year. And everybody thinks it's a wetland. So my condolences, my heart pours out to you with this process, with lawyers and 290, mine's free, by the way. Look use common sense. You guys are here. You know your town, you know your property. Walk the land, guys. I don't have to tell the white hairs, we all have it. But honestly, if it's a shed for tools, I don't know why you're putting your own people through this. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thousands of dollars in
And-
is what it costs to
And
garden sheds.
any further comments from the public at this time? Okay, I'd like to make a motion to table this at this point. All in favor? Aye. So moved. So thank you, and we look forward to hearing more information from you.
When do we get them back? After the wetlands?
Once you have enough information, bring it back.
After the wetlands?
Yeah. And then I would just review everything to make sure it's good and updated. Okay, are we ready to move right into the next one, or do we want to take over?
Yeah, break. It's hard to get a break.
Sure. Okay, we are going to take a 10-minute break, so we will resume at 7:35. All right, I now have my mic. I'm calling this meeting back to order. Again, my name is Joseph Malcarney. I'm the chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals, and all right, can you all hear me now? All right. As a reminder, my name is Joseph Malcarney. I am the chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals. We're continuing the meeting. We are going to move on to the application for the interpretation of the December 12th, 2023 interpretation determination from Mike Cosenza. That's what we're reviewing at this time. I would remind everyone that they address any comments when it comes time for the public hearing to the board. We then may ask other members that are here questions. All comments should be addressed to the board. Also, we would appreciate you keeping your comments brief, and if you hear someone that may have said something similar to what you're saying, we want to know, again, your thoughts. This isn't to take away your time, but if you can just be mindful that, we're here, we're gathering information to help us with this. So, certainly new information is the most helpful versus repeated information. And again, we ask that you be brief. And can I just kind of I'm sorry, is it? Okay, it is a little bit. Let me see if I can steal someone else's. When I back up, then it, all right, you can hear me okay now? All right, John had the better mic. So, we would, again, just ask that you address all the questions to the board and that you be brief with your comments. There's a lot of people here. Just kind of by way of show of hands, who here is representing the neighbors? Okay, and then who here is representing 6 Cents? We have a few people here. Okay, so, and what I'm going to do is try to kind of, when it comes time for the comments to try to go back and forth, so I may just ask, those that are representing the neighbors and those representing 6 Cents, so we can kind of get an even balance of that. And before we start, you're going to make a comment, but also Catherine, where you at? All right, Catherine, who is our liaison with the town board and is amazing, wanted to share a few comments.
Hi, my name is Catherine Mostello. I am on the town board of the town of Clinton, and I am a liaison to both the ZBA and the planning board. And I just want to take a moment before this got started to remind everyone here, first say thank you very much for coming. There is nothing better when you serve on a town board to have people actually turn up and care about an issue, so thank you for that. But I also wish to remind you that all these gentlemen sitting here at this desk are volunteers. They are taking hours out of their lives to do this job for you. So I ask that you be kind. I ask that you be respectful when you do make comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Charlie, if you want to kind of start with a couple
my hourly rate is... I wish it was more. Thank you, Joseph. So before us tonight is, and I'm going to read because I'm going to try to be concise, and if I start ambling, it will be here all night, and I hope you all follow my lead and are also concise. So before us tonight is a request by neighboring property owners that we interpret the December 12th decision by the Town Code Enforcement Inspector that the proposal from CECNY for development of their property fell within the definition of a conference center under town code and was therefore an allowed use within an AR zoning district. A conference center does require a site plan approval and a special use permit from the planning board. A previous owner of the property did actually have approval by the planning board for their operation of a conference center at this site. The applicant's letter raises a number of other issues, but fundamentally, one of the main questions for the zoning board is whether the new development does indeed, proposed by CECNY, does indeed fall within the town code's definition as a conference center. Now, we're open to all comments and public input. I will note that many of the written comments we've received, and we really do appreciate written comments, particularly electronically, so we don't have to print everything. Many of those comments address concerns about environmental issues related to the proposed development. So as you saw earlier, when the zoning board considers a variance request, those concerns, those environmental issues are quite important. But the specific issue before us tonight has more to do with whether the proposed development is, in the broadest sense, permitted under our zoning as a conference center. And so, in general, the planning board is where the town has authority to try to mitigate environmental concerns related to any development. Just a couple of comments about how we're going to proceed. We're going to first ask the attorneys representing both the applicants, and that's going to be Mr. Raplansky, I understand, and CECNY, which should be Ms. Polidot. Thank you. We're going to ask them to give presentations, and then we will open it up to the floor. Can I, Joseph asked for a show of hands of sort of where you are on this issue, but could I get a show of hands of who expects, or who would like or plans at this point to come up and give public comments? Okay, good. We might be out of here before midnight. We ask you to be as brief as possible, and we do really appreciate written comments. You know, we're going to be working on this issue for a while now, and having them all online so that we can review them all is easy. Arlene takes excellent minutes, but it's the written ones are a great help. So I would encourage you to submit them. And most of you, I assume, know how to submit them. There's you can get Arlene's email address online. It's pbzba@townofclinton.com. And so with that, Mr. Raplansky, the floor is yours.
Good evening, and thank you for your service. My name is Warren Raplansky. I'm also an attorney in Rhinebeck, and with an emphasis on land use, zoning, planning. I'm also the attorney for the towns of Pleasant Valley, town of Rhinebeck, Pine Plains. This doesn't seem to work. I'm going to try it without the microphone. No. Oh. Oh, okay. Okay, all right. And Pine Plains and the town of Northeast. I am representing a group of individual homeowners who I've named in my letter sent to you on January 12th, 24, which contains a good deal of my arguments to the board, so I'll try not to be repetitious, and has attachments to that. I recently filed another memo to the town of Hyde Park and submitted that to you, and I asked that that be part of the record also. And the clients that I represent all live adjacent to or in close proximity to the property in question, and under New York decisional law, they certainly have the requisite standing to appeal administratively the decision of Mr. Cosenza, the municipal code enforcement officer. And what we are appealing is his letter dated December 12th, 2023. And our appeal is much broader than just the issue of the definition of the hotel, and I've addressed a number of issues, and I'm sure the public will address that also. As noted in my January 12th letter to the board with the attachments, there are several aspects of Mr. Cosenza's letter that we feel were in error of the applicable law and provisions of the town zoning code with regard to this application of CECNY land holdings for what we feel is a large-scale hotel or resort, as opposed to an extension of a claimed existing holistic small conference center and or dude ranch. And I have to say, I'm personally familiar with that property because I represented the previous owners many, many years ago, the Khans, when they operated a very, very small, holistic, what they call conference center or dude ranch, for just a limited number of people, giving yoga lessons, horseback riding lessons, and seminars and things like that. very tiny facility. Apparently, Mr. Cosenza has been charged with making a threshold determination regarding several legal and zoning matters with regard to this application, because the code enforcement officer, Jeffrey Newman, is actually under the employ of the applicant and was under the employ of the Khans and under the employ of many of the subsequent owners of the property. That's a conflict of interest, and it's my understanding he has recused himself. Unfortunately, though, the most troubling aspect of Mr. Cosenza's determination was the fact that my reading of his analysis was that he did not perform any independent evaluation or investigation, but really relied on the record that had been provided to him by Mr. Newman, who I certainly respect as a zoning enforcement officer, but Mr. Newman has a real conflict of interest in this case, and we don't think it was appropriate for Mr. Cosenza to rely on the documentation and information supplied to him by Mr. Newman. And we've asked for a copy of everything that was before Mr. Cosenza, before he made his application decision, and that's been presented to you. And if you read those documents, you'll see that it's replete with references to records and information supplied by Mr. Newman, and we're troubled by that. As noted in my letter of January 12, 24, the bulk of the facility is located on 228 acres located off Route 9G in the town of Clinton. The property is located in the R3A and R5A zoning districts and in the town's Ridgeline Scenic Historical Protection Overlay District. The property is known as the Old Stone Farm and is historically a very significant property, both for the towns of Clinton and the towns of Hyde Park. Property is also environmentally sensitive. Crummello Creek, a Class A stream, bifurcates the Hyde Park property, portion of the property, and the property contains, I shudder to mention this, numerous town, federal, and state regulated wetlands and threatened or endangered species. Significantly, in the town of Clinton, a hotel is a prohibited use in the R3A and 5A zoning districts. A conference center is a use permitted pursuant to the issuance of a special use permit and site plan approval. It is curious that the conference center portion of the town code was amended in 2021 with significant input, if not control, by Mr. Newman at a time when he was employed by the property owner, and the amendment opened the door for the argument that the proposed conference center now fits within the definition of a conference center rather than a hotel. If you read the old definition of a conference center prior to the amendment, you will see that it did not in any way encompass what is now proposed. Certain language was added to that definition by Mr. Newman and whoever he worked with in the town at a time when he was working for the developer, and we suspect that the purpose behind that was to allow for this application to proceed where it wouldn't have been permitted otherwise. The 8.28 acre portion of the property, which lies within the town of Hyde Park, is located in the town's Greenbelt zoning district. In that zoning district, both a hotel and a conference center are uses that are prohibited. The applicant proposes to provide the necessary road frontage and driveway access to the property through the Hyde Park parcel, where a hotel and conference center is a prohibited use. And he would have to cross Crummello Creek via two bridges and they're going to construct an additional bridge. There's an existing bridge there now. Kathleen Moss, the zoning administrator for the town of Hyde Park, has issued two determinations the latest being on February 9th, 2024, in which he has denied the application of CECNY for the construction of an additional bridge and location of 2 driveways to and from Route 9G to be used in conjunction with the hotel. Ms. Moss, who's been zoning administrator, I appreciate the clapping, but it's disturbing.
Yeah, Warren, if you just hold on. Please, if you can refrain from any comments until it's appropriate time to hear from the public.
Ms. Moss, in her letter dated February 9th, 2024, stated as follows, and I quote, "Our courts have generally have held generally the use of land in one zoning district for an access road to another zoning district is prohibited, where the road would provide access to that would themselves be barred if they had been located in the first zoning district." So basically, you can't use the Hyde Park property to access the property in the town of Hyde Park if the Hyde Park zoning district prohibits that use, or if the town of Clinton's zoning code prohibits that use. And she cites a number of cases, which I've also cited in my brief to the planning board. And I'm sure your attorney could advise you on the relevance of those decisions. Ms. Moss concludes that because the lodging facility is not a permitted use in the Greenbelt District, the associated access drives are also not permitted, and the application will require a use variance from the ZBA to proceed. Use variance, as you know, is very difficult to obtain. Ms. Moss also rejected the developer's request for determination that the expanded access is eligible for an expansion of a non-conforming use under the town zoning law. For this reason, standing alone, the letter determination of Mr. Cosenza must be reversed, in our opinion, by this board. The next error of Mr. Cosenza in his decision was his conclusion that what is being proposed is in fact a conference center under the current definition of that term as contained in the zoning law. Again, this conclusion was reached by Mr. Cosenza simply on the basis of a comparison of the 2 definitions of conference center and hotel contained in the code. There was no independent verification or analysis of the complete application and narrative of 6 senses for their facility. In other words, he based his decision just on the definitions. And we argued in our letter to the board that at the very minimum, it's premature for him to have reached that determination until the entire application has been fleshed out before the ZBA and the planning board so that you know exactly what the uses are for this facility. When you find out what the actual uses and how it will be run and who's going to be staying there and under what terms, then a determination can be made as to whether this is actually a conference center or a hotel. We believe, based upon the empirical evidence that you have before them right now, it's clearly a resort or a hotel. A conference center, in the traditional sense, is an establishment where events are used for business, professional conferences, and seminars, sometimes with rooms for lodging, eating, and recreational activities for the attendees. It is fact that is the definition that used to be in the code until it was changed by Mr. Newman in 2021. There's little doubt that this law was amended specifically to allow this application to proceed before the board. Moreover, plans for the project, even in their current state, proposes a large-scale resort and hotel, which will include 65 guest rooms, 240 employees, a variety of other uses for patrons, including a 50-seat equine center, several dining areas, a bar, and program areas, as well as several on-site swimming pools. That's just on the basis of the preliminary plans that we have before us now. I'm sure the plans, when they're really fleshed out, will reveal a much more intensive hotel use. As demonstrated in my submission to the board, the ZBA and the zoning enforcement officer must use common sense in making their determinations. And I'm not accusing you of not applying that standard. And so as not to achieve an absurd or irrational result. It defies logic that this facility, given its large scale and amenities, could be merely called a conference center. And if you see what's happened here, it's really a hotel, and they've added all of these accessory events and things for the patrons of the hotel to participate in. When I was in college, I worked in the Catskills, and I worked at Grossinger's, and I remember the patrons at Grossinger's coming to the hotel. That was a hotel, a huge hotel, and they had amenities. They had yoga, they had ballet, they had dancing classes, they had entertainment, they had seminars, they had all of the things that this facility would have for its patrons. But it wasn't a conference center, it was a large-scale hotel resort, and that's what's being proposed here. Mr. Cosenza, in his letter of determination, also determined that the property constitutes a non-conforming use, and the special use permit issued to the facility back in 2005 has not expired. These determinations, we believe, are incorrect or based on insufficient conclusory statements provided by Mr. Newman. If you read the record that was presented to Mr. Cosenza, you'll see that it's just replete with documentation and affirmations given to Mr. Cosenza by Mr. Newman. And I'm not saying he was being dishonest, but it's highly irregular, if not improper, for Mr. Cosenza to have done that without making his own independent, in-depth analysis of what's going on here and what's being proposed. Also, as demonstrated by our application, during the period June 11th, 2019, through at least February 25th, 21, when the property was converted illegally to clearly encompass a hotel and restaurant, and notice of violations for that use, which I've attached to our submissions, were issued to the property owners by the zoning enforcement officers, various zoning enforcement officers. That constituted a conversion of whatever non-conforming use existed to a invalid use. The courts of this state have held that if you have a non-conforming use and you convert that non-conforming use to a use that's prohibited by the zoning law, as happened then, and I'm sure it was not only for that period of time, but if there was a full investigation, it would have revealed it was probably at least for 3 or 4 years, that constitutes an abandonment of that use. And I'm sure your attorney can advise you on that fact, but I will be submitting a case or several cases on point to support that contention. The same rationale applies to special use permits. The special use permit, to the extent that claims to be still in existence, clearly was abandoned at least during that period of time when the property was illegally converted and used as a hotel and a restaurant. There is plenty of empirical evidence that the use of the property as a conference center by prior owners of the property have been discontinued by other property owners in past years. And I'm sure you will hear testimony from neighbors to that effect. Finally, I'd like to just comment on Ms. Polidoro's letter to the board, which I received yesterday evening, and that the neighbors don't have the requisite standing to appeal. This is cases that were cited related to standing in litigation, when you're challenging a secret determination or a determination of the Zoning Board of Appeals. There's a bit more rigorous standard in that case. But when you're appealing an administrative appeal from a code enforcement officer to the zoning board, you don't have that rigorous standard. And if you're a neighboring property owner or live nearby, unquestionably, you have standing to appeal to this board. And with regard to Hyde Park, the applicant dismisses the notion that Hyde Park should be included and considered by the board, and its zoning should be considered. That's a lot of nonsense. This is clearly an integrated project. It's a type 1 action under seeker. There'll be a coordinated seeker review. The town planning board will be required to coordinate not only its seeker review, but its planning board review with the town of Hyde Park. Hyde Park has a huge stake in this application, given the fact that the only road frontage that exists is through the Hyde Park property. I don't believe the property has sufficient road frontage without that. And that's another issue that Mr. Consenza decided did in fact exist. If you read his letter, he says there is in fact the required road frontage. But if you read the letter from Hyde Park zoning enforcement officer, you'll see, no, they don't have the requisite road frontage. And if the applicant, the developer is going to appeal that, God bless them. They can do that. But at this point, it's been denied, and they don't have access to this property. I think I will turn it over to the public. I'm sure you're tired of hearing from me. And thank you for your kind consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Naplansky. Yes, comment from...
Wait, can you just acknowledge our time?
Yes.
No, we
just want to acknowledge that our town attorney is here as well.
Hi. Joe, do you want to let Victoria?
Yes. Yeah. And Victoria, you're up next. But thank you. Yep, no, you're good.
Okay, hi everyone. Good evening. I'm Victoria Polidoro. I'm a partner at Rodenhausen Shaw Polidoro, LLP, also in Rhinebeck, like my colleagues. I guess I also have to tell you that I represent the Village of Red Hook Zoning Board of Appeals, the Town of Red Hook Zoning Board of Appeals, Town of Dover Planning Board. So just like my colleagues, I focus my practice in land use and zoning. So here we are tonight. I'm here tonight on behalf of CECNY LLC, which owns the property, which is the subject of this appeal. I'm also here with Kelly Michael, agent for CECNY. As you know, CECNY currently operates a conference center on the property and has applied to expand the conference center as a conforming use permitted by Section 250-45 of the zoning law. As you pointed out earlier tonight, the main question before you is really a simple one. Does the project, as proposed, fit within the zoning law's definition of a conference center? You're all zoning board members and experts, so you know that the language of zoning and the language of everyday life are often very different. For instance, when your friend purchases a new home, they don't post on Facebook that they just bought a new single-family dwelling. It's a new home. Likewise, you read blogs about people in their luxury tiny homes. They don't describe it as a, quote, mobile home on an individual lot, which is what your code would call it. And just in this way, a non-zoning person saying that something must be a hotel because it provides overnight accommodations does not make it so. In fact, Northern Duchess also provides very expensive transient overnight accommodations, and we wouldn't call that a hotel. So your job here tonight is to step into the shoes of the zoning administrator, or the MCE. I'm not sure, I can't remember what that stands for, but MCEI Cosenza, and apply the language of the zoning law, not everyday language, to this project. Whether or not you like the project or think the project is a good idea is irrelevant, frankly. The town board is the elected body. They make the decisions about what's allowed where in the town. Your role tonight is to interpret what the town intended when it adopted this new law and this new definition. It's what the town board intended, not what the opposition thinks it should have adopted or what they think it should mean now. Their chance to challenge that law expired back in 2021. They could have participated. We're here now. What I have tonight is copies of the resolution adopting the 2021 law, along with comments from Dutchess County Planning. We're going to submit them to you just for the record. It does go to show that the town knew exactly what it was doing when it expanded the definition of a conference center. The law was referred to Dutchess County Planning, which commented that, the size for these lots should be reduced. In turn, the town reduced the size of conference centers. This was an intentional and thought-out law. It doesn't matter if it was by whom it was proposed, because a majority of the town board, a majority of your elected officials adopted it. So all of this tonight about some conspiracy is really irrelevant. You have a definition. The definition is valid. It's here, and it's what we have to deal with. So what does the definition say? Section 250-105 of the zoning law defines a conference center as an establishment for hire as a location for events used for business or professional conferences and seminars, often with rooms for lodging, eating, and recreational activities. And then there's a second expanded portion of the definition. Also, an establishment which attracts clients principally for recreational or health activities and contains rooms for lodging and eating for its clients. That second part was added in 2021. So I do want to note that nowhere in this definition does it say that a conference center must be small or cute or quaint or otherwise acceptable to Mr. Raplansky. There's no size qualification. So the property currently operates within the first sentence of this definition, a facility that is used for professional conferences. The project proposes to expand the facility under the second part of the definition, an establishment which attracts clients principally for recreational or health activities and contains rooms for lodging and eating for clients. The primary purpose under that second expanded portion of the definition is recreational and health activities, with overnight accommodations playing a supporting role. This is different than a hotel, which is defined as a building which offers rental sleeping rooms and which may also include dining rooms, bars, kitchens, etc. A hotel could simply be a place to lay your head and no more. Here the focus really is doing wellness programs and activities. I'm going to pass the mic over to Kelly Leibold briefly to describe to you what CECNY is proposing and walk you through a similar facility that Six Senses operates in India. I just want to make sure this all gets in the record. There's been some allegations that, there wasn't enough research done, so we want to make sure that you have all the research you need before you. Oh, I'll hand them out while you do this.
Thank you. Again, Kelly Leibold with KRC Planning Consultants representing CCENY. Sorry? Oh, okay. As Victoria has stated, this particular facility is a program-based health and wellness retreat, and so the emphasis is on program. The programs broadly include education, training classes, dining, and lodging for clients. Each client, which is defined as someone that's attending a program, is required to select and reserve a program before they arrive at the site. So in order to gain access, there's a gatehouse. In order to gain access, you would have had to have previously registered for a particular program, and when you arrive on site, you will be checked in. If someone arrives to the gatehouse and they have not selected a program, they're not allowed attendance into the facility. Program durations, and I'm going to go through those. Sure. Program durations, they vary, so they'll run for hours, days, or weeks. And I'll review a few of those examples in a minute. Overnight stays are not required for all programs. So as stated above, some programs are just simply for a day or 4 hours. The length of someone's stay is largely dependent on the program that they select. And again, I'll go through a few of those programs in a minute. A client is not permitted to stay overnight if they are not registered and partake in a program that requires overnight stay. Multiple programs are going to be offered at one time at the facility. They're seasonally based, and the programs that are offered will vary based on the seasons. So there'll be a variety of different programs that are offered. So I'm going to refer to this document that I had provided to you, which is an example of some other program offerings in different Six Senses retreats. As you flip through this brochure, there are a variety of different sample programs. So I'm just going to touch on a few of them to give you an idea of this particular facility. So some of the program offerings include holistic prenatal care, the art of staying young, Pilates and wellness, weight management, and yoga. On page 5 of this particular brochure that I provided to you is a sample daily schedule for someone who would be arriving at the property and they would be enrolled in a weight management program. So for example, day 3 would involve nourishing your body. The morning session would be creating a balanced diet, hands-on cooking and nutritional workshops, nutrition and supplements, and in-depth exploration of dietary choices. So there's a variety of different events that will happen on a day-to-day schedule. Under the weight management option, the definition is learn about the importance of balanced nutrition, exercise, and a healthy mind. Find out what is best for you based on your dosha type and current reality, and receive the right guidance to keep up the good work once you return home. Some of the benefits of this program: increases your energy and vitality, helps you sleep more soundly, gives you greater confidence as you gain control of eating, improves your long-term health, and decreases stress. As shown on this brochure, there's a variety of different options for that program. There's a 14-night, a 17-night, and a 21-night day program. Yoga at Six Senses. This program includes private sessions, guided mediation, and breathe work with signature massages and energy treatments. Some of the benefits could be life-changing, increased flexibility, builds up muscle and strength, improved posture. And on this particular program, there's a 7-night option, a 5-night option, and a 14-night option. Can you hold that? Sorry, just for 1 second so I can flip this. And one of the last ones that I just want to highlight is called Staying Young. So this particular retreat offers a holistic approach to well-being that encompasses physical, mental, and emotional treatments and therapies. Sorry, I can't flip and do that. If you can hold that. It's a little awkward. Some of the benefits of this program include healthy lifestyle habits, mindfulness and stress reduction, nutritional education, exercise and movement, holistic health approaches, and education on aging and disease prevention. And I just want to end with one final quote in this brochure, which is, this retreat offers a holistic approach to well-being that encompasses physical, mental, and emotional treatments and therapies. So the last few pages of this brochure are devoted to some of the proposed potential programs that would be offered at this Hudson Valley version. Some of those programs include equine therapy program, horse riding lessons, yoga and Pilates, meditation walks, sleep management workshops, bodywork and self-healing workshops, stress relief programs, archery techniques, indoor and outdoor fitness, nature trail hikes, fall foliage walks, bird watching classes, fishing excursions, guided snowshoeing, biodynamic gardening, farm to fork workshops, edible landscape forestry, stargazing and astronomy, art and makers class, writing workshops, and property history immersion. That is just to give you a summary of some of the programs that may be offered at this particular facility, and hopefully that gives you a better understanding of the fact that this facility is program-based. And again, if someone wants to be a client at this facility, you need to sign up and reserve for a program, and then that will determine your length of stay.
Also, before I get back into my argument, I do want to address some of the numbers that are being thrown around by the public. I know these are all issues before the planning board, but you're humans and you hear these things. Numbers about total number of employees, total number of cars. When we do planning, you plan for a worst case scenario. It's like going shopping the day before Thanksgiving. That's not what is expected to happen. That is the worst case. And so when you hear numbers like that, that includes all 3 shifts at full capacity, full programming. And so normally we spoke with the project sponsors, and they say that at these types of facilities, and they have several, attendance is usually 60%. There's an average 60% given the season. So that's what we're looking at. Nope, I got it. Okay, so going back, in sum, this project might be called a health and wellness program facility in everyday talk, but under the town of Clinton zoning law, your own zoning language, it is a conference center. It fits squarely within that expanded definition. The opposition argues that the project is not a conference center because it defies logic, because it's clearly a hotel, and that it must be a hotel. But these arguments are just conclusory. No analysis is provided as to why this project does or doesn't fit within those words that you are tasked with interpreting. The opposition has not provided a rational basis for their argument, and the zoning administrator's determination must be upheld. I'm just going to quickly address some of the other arguments that have been raised. I want to start with Hyde Park. Hyde Park zoning law is completely irrelevant to your determination. MCEI Cosenza has no jurisdiction over the zoning law in Hyde Park. It's a completely different language, a different dialect, if you will, and therefore this board has no jurisdiction over that. The argument that the town of Clinton ZEO should have reached a similar determination to Ms. Moss is also nonsensical, because the questions asked of Ms. Moss were completely different to the question that Mr. Cosenza was tasked with answering. One had to do with access, the other had to do with whether a use fit into a certain category. They're apples and oranges. The zoning languages are different, and one has no bearing on the other. But for the record, Hyde Park's decision is being appealed, and of course there will be planning coordination between the two communities. We're not saying Hyde Park doesn't have a role, it just doesn't have a role here tonight. It has nothing to do with it. And I think, the opposition knows that they don't have a lot to rely on because they spent a significant amount of time talking about something that's completely irrelevant to your board tonight. Next, the existing conference center use has not expired. The conference center has been used continuously and has not expired as determined by MCEI Cosenza. The only way that the use would have expired is if the use was discontinued for a 12-month period, and it was not. The burden of proof is on the opposition to show that the determination was wrong, and they have not met this burden. Mr. Raplansky's letter talks about proof will be provided by the neighboring property owners. We haven't seen this. He says that there's substantial empirical evidence, but such evidence has not been supplied. There's just nothing to go on other than, their feeling that the use was discontinued. The fact that a prior owner may have received a violation for doing something they weren't allowed to do does not mean that they abandoned what they were allowed to do. Someone can build a pool at their house illegally without giving up their right to a single-family home. One just doesn't mean that the other is gone. So we're not sure what evidence the neighbors will present tonight, but we do have a map prepared, just in case, showing the distances of each of the neighbors named in the letter to both the property line and to the entrance to the hotel. I'm not sure if they have seen or not seen anything, but we want to make sure that this gets in the record. What their argument that the use has expired, though, does prove is that the property is appropriate as an event center because events have been happening and the neighbors were both unaware and unbothered by such events because they didn't know they happened. I provided you in your materials with 2 invoices showing that the facility was rented for meetings and also sworn testimony from the vice president of International Hotel Groups that an event was held June 7th and that notice of the event was provided to the town in advance. I'm also submitting tonight for the record a copy of IHG's website, which currently markets the conference center for retreats and conferences. So the use is active and ongoing, and more events are planned in the spring. Therefore, the ZBA must find that the conference center use is continuous. Lastly, there was sort of an argument that the use would be a prohibited expansion of a non-conforming use. We believe that this is a complete mischaracterization of the proposal. The nuance in Mr. Cosenza's letter is that right now the property has a special use permit, but since the zoning law changed in 2021, the regulations have changed. So if it wants to continue operating under the prior regulations, that would be non-conforming. But an application to bring it into full compliance with the 2021 law would be a completely conforming use. So it would not be expansion of a non-conforming use. Did I miss anything? So I would ask for a few minutes at the end of the meeting just to address any issues that have been raised tonight. And thank you for your attention and happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Any questions from the board at this time? Okay, so at this time, I'd like to hear comments. Wait, we didn't open the public hearing. All right. Yeah. I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor? So moved. All right, at this time, I'd like to take comments from the public, and again, I'm going to go from 6 cents to neighbor and kind of back and forth. So, if right here, gentlemen, are you representing neighbors or 6 cents? You want to come up to the? It's okay. It's all right. It's okay, neighbor. You're fine. You're fine.
Go by the mic.
Yep, just stand by the mic if you would.
Okay.
And if you would state your name.
I'm Dal Lamagna, and I own and live on Rhine Valley Farm, which is next door to the property with my wife, Sarah Drew, who's here. Can you still hear me?
Just
Okay.
a little louder.
And there's a 1 mile long shared, what do you call it? We share the border for a whole mile on the west side. So what I understand, what I just heard, is that if the property was not used for a period of 12 months underneath this special permit, it expired. And I knew all the people who were over there from Ramit, who ran the Duchess, and then he sold it to Liberty Friedman LLC, and Liberty Friedman LLC did not operate a conference center. I got the dates here. They bought the property on October 12th, 2021, and bought it with a plan to operate a horse sanctuary, basically. And Chittigar, who is the managing partner of this LLC, and then Ann Friedman was the money behind it all. They sold it more than a year later, in November of 2022, after succumbing to the constantly raising offers that they got for $13 million. And during the possession of their property, more than a year, my memory and my experience was that there were no events. Chit lived there, he had his family come there, they had parties. The proof of events that the attorney just came up with were from when 6 Cents bought the property. But there's that 12-month period, which I contend caused the special use permit to expire. I have other things to say, but I think that's enough to make that very poignant point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, is there anyone here, like, speaking on behalf of 6 Cents? Yes, so if you could come up.
Hi, my name is Wendy Maitland. I don't know what other information you need to know about me, but I was born and raised in the area, and I also happen to be very familiar with this property because I knew Ramit, who wanted me to sell the property, which I didn't end up selling because he sold the business to one of his investment partners, which was Chid Liberty and Annie Friedman. And very shortly after they closed on the property, I didn't meet with them when they closed in 2021, but in January of 2022, I got a call from Intercontinental Hotel Group. So January 20th, 2022 was the first time that they had any contact, IHG, with anybody who had anything to do with the property. And I'm just saying that because people are saying that in 2021, whatever happened with the laws was directly for the purpose of this hotel retreat conference center to happen. So that couldn't have been, because they didn't even know these people existed in 2021. So I just wanted to make you guys aware of that, and I have documentation of that, which I just found on my phone. So 6 Senses did not have any familiarity, hadn't set foot on the property before the end of February of 2022. And I'd be happy to provide you guys with my documentation. From that time until late in 2022, I had a lot of contact with the former owner who sold to 6 Senses, or whatever their LLC is, and we were not allowed to go to the property several times because they had retreats. And I also have email documentation of that. So just to address what some people might think, that there was more than a year with no retreats, when those were the owners, there were retreats, because I needed access to the property and I had to schedule it around their retreats. And then lastly, I just want to stand up in support of the use of this property, which I was very familiar with in the planning stages for potentially closing, way before this group even owned the property. So to me, whatever happened in 21 had zero to do with this. They didn't know each other. They had not even been introduced. Jeff Newman hadn't been introduced to the current owners, and so there was no setup so that this could happen. Everything that I was told in planning this purchase by this current owner stated that it was going to be heavily programmed, and that each one of their properties was different, and this was going to be a property that would require people to engage in the programming in order to stay there. So not a straight hotel. That's all. I just want to say and support.
Thank you. And if you could provide us whatever
I will
information you have.
provide you with whatever. I'll reach out through,
Arlene.
yes, and anything, we can have a conversation, and any documents that you request that I have, I will certainly be happy to provide them.
Thank you. Okay, so let's let this gentleman who's,
We do oppose and
One.
support. If you're
yeah.
oppose and support, we're going to alternate.
Thank you so much. I guess this is not designed for short people.
Yeah.
Thank you to the Zoning Board of Appeals and for all the work you do. My name is Donna Burns, and I am a town resident. Bought my property in 2006. I live on 92 Coyote Ridge Road, the next road over from the proposed resort. And I have to say, I want to give you my experience, but to prepare to be here tonight, I read a lot of town board minutes, I watched YouTube videos, I watched planning board hearings, and read all those minutes, and what I learned was deeply disturbing, and I'm really dismayed. What I discovered was there was a private person who was promoting the illegal hotel operations on the property, who then was intimately involved in crafting that 2021 conference center law, line by line. And you can watch this all on the videos. I've given you over 100 pages of documentation with the sites and everything. Then became the town ZEO in charge of interpreting the law. So whether or not we're not quibbling with what the law says, he was in charge of interpreting the law and did it in a way to favor his former employer, the Duchess. And he admitted that he was a paid property consultant by the International Hotel Group. And he interpreted it in a way that was fundamentally contrary to the intent of what the town wanted when they worked very hard to make sure that the rural character and scenic beauty of this town remains. And in fact, right before the pandemic, you can find, and I cited this in my in the testimony, I submitted a town board meeting where it was very clear that hotels are not wanted in this town, hotels are not permitted in this town, and even when the debate happened with the conference center law, Mr. Newman was told point blank by a town board member what they didn't want was an event hotel. And then what happened is, as the ZEO, he interpreted the law to confirm the legality of the proposed resort. He advised a legally required permit that was supposed to happen for wetlands that implicated the Blanding's turtle habitat, an endangered species, and he told the planning board, oh, no, you can dispense with that. And that's also in the document that I provided. Then he made the decision unilaterally to accept the application and forward it to the planning board. And then, to make it even worse, what he did at the end was, before the planning board, there was a question about the conference center uses to the applicants, and he just stepped in and started answering about the uses of the property. And, you know, quite frankly, this history is really disturbing and raises questions of integrity and fairness in this town. Now, I understand he's recused, and I'm glad he's recused, but the fact is, he wasn't recusing himself until a citizens group pointed out the conflict of interest. So I really think it's incumbent upon this zoning board of appeals to not rely on the decisions that he made, but to look anew at everything that happened. So that's the background. I want to speak about the property. So we're right next door, and it really wasn't until 2017 or 2018 that this property use became an issue. At that point, I come home one day and there's a note on my door, or a cheap bottle of wine, that says, new owners have taken over, and if you have any questions, call this number. It was not signed. So I called the number, and lo and behold, it's the same Jeff Newman, and he says, don't worry, it's going to be yoga, it's going to be quiet. That's not what happened. In 2018 and 2019, we had people wandering all over our property, and they said they were staying at this hotel called the Duchess. And I said, listen, I don't know anything about a hotel, but you're on private property. This is a private road, and we were very polite, and I think my husband even drove them down to Route 9G. And then in 2019, there was so much noise, parties, or loud music that it was the summer, we had the choice either to close our windows and be hot, or have our windows open and hearing pounding music all night. It was not okay. And the fact is, we know that when the pandemic started, there were weddings being held. One of my neighbor's sons had a wedding there. And finally, it started to quiet down. And kind of consistent with what Dal said, at the end of the summer 2021, things really just stopped. And I know this because I drive by there all the time, and at night, it was just pitch black, nothing was happening. Now it's lit up like a parking lot every night, but it was really just a very quiet environment, and that really persisted until 2023. And I do note, I put the letter of accusal in there, but, you know, Jeff admits in 2022 he was employed by the International Hotel Group. And I think, you know, we can say, well, it's different words and everything, but the fact is there is a common sense aspect here. And more importantly, Six Senses itself advertises itself. They have a press release. I also supplied that to you that says they are the #1 hotel brand worldwide. This is my words, that's their words. In the water usage and in the traffic usage reports they submitted with the application, they use the hotel classification. Why? Because it's clearly a hotel. And I think we can call it whatever we want, but the fact is, this is a pretty big hotel. It's 35% bigger than the Mirbeau Hotel in Rhinebeck and 200% bigger than the Roosevelt Hotel in Hyde Park. And, you know, the only thing I would add to this is that to interpret the law the way that is being urged here makes a mockery of all the other laws that are in place to protect the scenic beauty and the rural character of this town. The hotel law, the Airbnb type law, all of that, because all you have to do now is say it's a conference center. And I was here in the October 3rd meeting where they talked about one of the activities is going to be bee pollination. Now I hear it's going to be stargazing. Well, I look up at the stars and I've got bees on my flowers. So maybe I could have a conference center, and this is really a very poor precedent to set for this. And really, if you look at the law itself, which is obviously your job and very much appreciated, you'll see it talks about an event permit. No, what they're really asking is they want an evergreen event permit to just go on and on and on every day, 365 days a year. 366 this year, and this is just absolutely torturing the law and undermining all the other laws that would protect against massive development in this town. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I'm sorry I talk fast, but I'm trying to get it all in, and you'll have a lot of reading from my submission.
Thank you, Donna. Yeah.
Can you submit electronically that thing that you sent to Arlene? It's a lot of printing. And
So I'll scan it. She's not really tech person. It's okay.
You know what, it's a lot of articles that go over and over, and it goes to the point that was raised. The hotel use, the secret hotel. I didn't know anything about a secret hotel.
It's
But
fine.
that
I'll
went on
scan
for
it.
years.
We'll get it. Thank you. All right, is there someone here supporting Six Sense? Yeah, if there is some support for Six Sense, anyone? Is there anyone getting up to come speak, or? Okay.
Is that you?
Yeah, come.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Oates. I'm the president and CEO of the Hudson Valley Economic Development Corporation.
Sorry,
Can
it's
you hear?
last name?
Oates, O-A-T-E-S.
Or,
I'm sorry.
what company?
Hudson Valley Economic Development Corporation.
Go ahead, sorry.
Sure. So, again, I'm here in support of the Six Sense project, which we believe is a conference center. We've read the conference center, in the town zoning law, and we believe the proposal fits it. Six Sense is offering a wellness retreat center which contains rooms, lodging, for lodging and eating, and it clearly fits within this definition. We're in strong favor of this proposal. We think it would be a great addition to Dutchess County and the Hudson Valley as a whole. And we want to obviously brief tonight, so we know there's a lot of people that want to speak. So we just wanted to, again, thank you for your consideration and your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Edwin Albert Pell III. I live on 216 Long Pond Road since 1986. So this project, this housing project proposed by the International Continental Hotel Group of Saudi Arabia to house transients is really not in our interest. The model used by Woodstock would be far better. They're doing a 600-acre housing development in which the houses are purchased by the owners who live there long-term and develop a relationship with the community, are known and will behave well because we know who they are, and they've got to come a day, year after year, and what their behaviors will reflect upon them. Whereas this transient housing, people coming to do coke parties, cocaine parties. I'd like to know if we're going to be allowed to screen the effluents from the waste system so we can see what kind of drugs are being used on the property. That would be very helpful if the developers from Saudi Arabia would allow us to screen the effluents for illegal drugs. But anyway, what we've been missing in the town of Clinton is a place to house the new settlers. I like to call them new settlers. Some people call them illegal aliens. I prefer new settlers. This is an excellent place to house the new settlers. Just as Manhattan houses new settlers in luxury hotels, we can house our new settlers in these hotels. And Hochul will give us the money, or the federal government will give us the money, and it'll be an excellent, but they'll have children, and they'll need to go to school. And the school buses will need to arrive and pick them up. In the morning, the school buses will need to arrive to let them out in the afternoon. And from what I've seen so far, they are not planning on adequately wide roads to accommodate school buses coming and going. So I'd like to see this upgraded to allow school buses to come and go. And in fact, if you want to increase the size of this facility, triple it so we can accommodate many new settlers, make Hochul happy, make Biden happy, make the Democrat board happy. Please triple it.
Okay. All right. Yeah, let's see. Do we have anyone else? This is in favor of 6 cents. All right. All right. Not everyone at once.
Mine would be just no, not right now. As a realtor, and I'm so accustomed to overlay maps, okay, all sorts. And as much as I want to have a cold beer with my friend in a commercial zone with a pub in the town of Clinton, this one's a big one. You got 228 beautiful acres with a driveway in Hyde Park, and generally speaking, where that mailbox is on the road usually collects all the revenue. On this particular property, I mean, commercial zoning's really kind of needed for a lot of different reasons. Whether it's a conference center, whether it's a hotel, whether it's a dude ranch. That's a commercial use. And generally what happens, you already got a mega in town, very similar on the lake. A lot of these turn into a 501(c)(3) not-for-profit. So give you an example, the IBM Country Club Conference Center in Poughkeepsie is now Calvary Chapel. It's a church, okay? So in this case, all the homework's really not done. Your noise ordinances are very true, whether it's an Airbnb or whether it's whatever. You got noise ordinance in town, they got to be shut down. So again, if you're going to overlay this, if you're going to rezone it, I mean, that definition is loose. And generally speaking, on sale of a property, the buyer's responsibility as due diligence is to make sure that all of the violations are clear, all of the easements are clear, and there's a clear transfer unless you really bought something and you had no idea about how this is going to fit in your zoning and planning. So I would probably vote that's a commercial use on that property. Does it support commercial use? I heard R3 and 5. I presume 3-acre and 5-acre residential. Now, residential with ownership, people take responsibility. Just one really quick. You look at the town of Newburgh, their historic mistake was 70% of the city of Newburgh was non-owner occupied, and it went in the toilet. if you have a non-owner occupied place, and I know it's a rental, it could be an Airbnb, they may probably not charge a hotel tax, and they should. That's more revenue money for the state and less out of our pockets. So you got a lot of zoning and issues, you got a lot of pre-planning issues. So I had to say no at this time. Thank you.
So is there someone that's in favor, supporting the sixth sentence? Yes. Come on up.
Thank you. My name's Jason Caritas. I moved to Clinton about 20 years ago. Moved to Rhinebeck, and I'm building another house in Clinton currently. I don't have any connection to Six Senses. Oddly enough, I did attend pop-up restaurants, weddings when it was a Duchess, when Ramit had it. It was kind of like sort of a no man's land over there. And I understand certainly a lot of the concerns, having lived here for as long as I have. When I moved here, people told me I lived on Center Road, close to Omega. People said there's a lot of traffic in the summer. I used the tennis courts, I used the restaurants, I used the yoga facilities, and you know it was an asset. I enjoyed it. I don't, again, with no connection at all to Intercontinental or the current owners. I think if we're going to have something that's sustainable minded and environmentally conscious on 9G, on a commercial, on a busy street, I would be open to hearing more about it. I think there's a lot of this seems to be fear-based. Nobody, we love this area for a reason, and nobody wants to see it overdeveloped, overbuilt, or with traffic and commercial. But I do think, again, I don't think all development is bad. And I would just be interested in knowing, more about it, what's going to be there. And if it is indeed about the programs, I've actually stayed at a Six Senses in Portugal. It's amazing. It is about the programs. It was about yoga. It was about, nutrition, wellness. And I enjoyed it. And, but if, would I want a big hotel, a Sheraton there? Absolutely not, but I would want to know more about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Good.
Hello, I'm Rick Perkins. I'm the immediate neighbor, and never done this before. Lived there for 20 years, and the last gentleman was called No Man's Land. I've been there 20 years. I work at Northern Dutchess Hospital. I'm a doctor there.
Yeah, talk a little louder.
Sorry, I'm Rick Perkins. I'm the neighbor. I've been there 20 years, and I'm raising my two boys there. I moved to Clinton because it's a rural community, and I love it. I grew up in a rural area. I'm a doctor. I work at Northern Dutchess, and to me, it's not a no man's land. It's a beautiful agricultural area. When Mr. Ramit and one earlier said that we didn't notice things, when Mr. Ramit ran his hotel or whatever we call it, he had parties all night, every Saturday night, and he even sent us letters to apologize, and because he made so much noise and there were so many complaints. And then the people, and you'll see the map and you'll see where we are, and it's Clinton, there's woods, and there's woods behind us, and the people came from their property onto our property on many occasions. And my boys are teenagers now, but they were younger then. And one time they actually ran into the house because there's a bunch of people in our backyard, and one time my wife took those people and took them back to their place. So, that's something we did not enjoy. So those are my comments.
Thank you.
Oh, one other thing. The traffic on 9G is I commute up to Rhinebeck, and the traffic is significantly worse now than it was 15 years ago. I'm sure you all know that. And the accidents are atrocious, and I'm concerned about that very much. Thanks.
Yep, thank you. Anyone else, I know we have a certain number of people that are here, in support of 6 cents. Are there any others? Yeah, Rich?
Hi, I'm Rich Morris, and I live on Hollow Road. I'd like to read a letter from my neighbor, James Boyd, who wanted to be here tonight, but he got called to the office and he's now on his way to Singapore. I'm waiting to express my strong support for the proposed 6 census developments slated for the town of Clinton. I built my home on Clinton, on Hollow Road in 2012, and am deeply committed to the community. And as a local resident, I welcome the kind of thoughtful, responsible, environmentally sensitive development that this proposed conference center would bring. I have also known Neil Jacobs, CEO of 6 Senses, in a business capacity for more than 2 decades. I know him to be a professional and utmost integrity, particularly in his earlier management of several hospitality properties throughout Asia. I'm not going to go on and read the rest of the letter. I'll save the night. I'm going to pass these out so that you all have copies of them. But I would like to make a comment that we all want Clinton to remain rural. That property is a gorgeous property. I grew up riding horses on it. I grew up across 9G. And in fact, the property in question, where the entrance would be, was our hayfield when I was a kid. If something like this proposal doesn't come through, all development started with rural land. I would hate to see that be a development. We talk about noise, we talk about people coming on your property. If that were 50 houses, it would be the end of a nice rural, nice wooded area. So I would encourage you to look carefully at the zoning. I think Cosenza's interpretation was correct, and if it's correct, then it should be allowed. If it's not correct, then don't. Give you anything else. No shouting. I didn't yell.
Thanks, Rich. Yes, please.
Just make sure, can everyone hear me?
Yeah, I don't know, if you can just speak loud, then this is mainly for the TV portion.
I'm Sarah Drew, and I'm the wife of Dalamania, and our property abates the proposed 6 Senses resort, if you will. We'll call it that for a moment, for about a mile. First of all, I just want to thank all of you for your time and dedication, and everyone that showed up today. I think this really gives a sense of how our community is concerned about this, and concerned that whatever happens, that it happens in the right manner, and that there's some guardrails around it. I'm going to speak briefly because a lot of these issues have been covered, but I just want to give my amplification on it. In concerns of when the Duchess was there, I too was over there at some of the parties with Ramit and some weddings, or a wedding, I should say. All that said, there was a lot of noise there in the summer, and outdoor events do carry noise, and we heard it all through our whole fields. The same with people that were going, people would wander over, and again, maybe it's something about how people in our community drove them back sometimes over to the Duchess, they would get lost, and this was a pretty normal occurrence. Right now, on the current thing, 6 Senses has no trespassing all along our border. And we looked at the other side, and there was no trespassing towards ours. But anyway, there is a sign, right, there's signs that kind of go along our border. One of the things that I think is a real, and I see and repeated here, is that people are concerned about, keeping the rural nature of our community. At Round Valley Farm, we have, in essence, and it's 240 acres there, we really see it as a nature sanctuary. And there's a gift of maintaining relatively undisturbed, intact ecosystems that allow for natural migration patterns of nature and seasonal cycles. And it's one of the primary boons of this area for all of us. We've provided like common access to about at least 2 miles of trails for the Browns Pond community to be able to walk on. And our dedication right now is really to help preserve this ecosystem, of which the proposed Six Senses property is part of, and it's part of this extended land. You know, because there's a border line right there, doesn't mean that the land isn't really the same land and our system isn't connected. And that's where we really get to water, and I think that there's a big concern among many of the residents that even though there's been studies and that the draw on the well refills and, you know, that the usage that was 5,000, you know, right now would only be 18,000. The average two household in the Hudson Valley right now is 240 gallons per day. So I don't know if that's you know, if they're calculating for the 64 rooms that will be there, how many people would be there, plus the use of 3 pools, plus the use of a kitchen, plus the use of a big conference center. And right now, we're not in a dry season, and all of us know what it looks like when a drought comes. You know, we've had people and just in discussion say that when it gets dry, there is dirt that starts to come up in the water. And water gives us life, and without one of the great gifts that we have right now is fresh, sweet, abundant water. And I would propose, you know, if this goes ahead, that there is some sort of constraint that is put on the amount of water that can be drawn from the water table. Because the water table, again, does not stop at the border division. The water table affects all of us. And Crum Creek, you know, they said there is going to be a water processing plant for sewage, but that's going to be dumped into Crum Creek. This was stated yesterday. That will flow down, and it won't stop when it moves at the border of the Six Senses property. It'll flow down, and it will seep into the watershed. I mean, it is part of, so it's, I think these are all considerations, and you can do studies, but I know that water, the sanctity of our watershed is everything. And with climate change coming, another and final point on the water issue, is that one of the things that was not addressed is the calculations for global climate change. And those should be put into there of what the, you know, just take what a global thing, a regional area, and there's maps out there and there's studies that have been done, what the global climate change usage would be on the water. Noise, I mean, I have to say it sounds like a nightmare to have like at least 18 months of 64 buildings being built. You hear one building happening on Browns Pond and it's loud and we hear it. So it's going to affect the ecosystem too. We have one of our fields that we leave with milkweed so that the monarch butterflies can come and do their, can go and you know, lay eggs and seed. And there's been studies that monarch butterflies are affected by sound. And this is the one that runs, the field that runs right up to Six Senses. So there's going to be a lot of sound. And that's only one of the ecosystem elements. So these need to all be considerations when we're thinking about the size of this development. I mean, the courses that are being offered, and I've been to a Six Senses in Ibiza, gosh, I want to go to every one of them. So it's not that the usage doesn't sound fun and great, but I really think that we need to think about what constraints we put on and how it will affect our environment. And then noise, you know, the traffic thing, as you said, yeah, any increased traffic, we hear it at rush hour now, and we're, you know, quite a distance. I can only think that the guests that are right on 9G are going to hear, even with the buffers, are going to hear a lot of traffic. And if it's an increase of 200 people a day, And one of the questions that we had, and I think is also an environmental thing, is, you know, will there be helicopters bringing guests in? You know, many of the Six Senses resorts, not all of them, in India, the one they're talking about, I think the price for a room is $540. In Ibiza, it's, the average is $1,100 per night and goes up to $3,000 per room. So, you know, what type of people are going to be coming in? And, you know, I think we need to have constraints on helicopters, I would say. Yeah, and I wasn't clear, and this is something to think about. Is it, you know, in terms of jobs being provided here, you know, I know it's hard to find service workers right now. I mean, a lot of the habitats recently closed. One of the reasons, there's multiple reasons, but, you know, staffing is difficult. You know, are you going to be bringing people in that are just, you know, on temporary work permits, since it's an international company, an international billion-dollar company? Okay, I do have a conclusion, and it's right here. So, as a community, we're really at a crossroads. What is the ethos of our community? Will we support this multinationally, multi-billion-dollar corporation, IHG, which appears to be extractive of our town resources, time, and treasury? And whose presence will fundamentally change the integrity has the potential, and I hope that would be changed. And I want to open the doors for it to be changed. Integrity of our precious ecosystem and rural community. Is this what we want to leave for future generations? I think there's maybe a way to do this, and this is what I didn't expect to say, but I think there's maybe a way to do that we can bridge and compromise and find a way, because I do think that if there is going to be development here, this might be a good option. But I think there's a lot of work to do on what constraints. You know, there's a lot of splitting of the hair, whether this is a hotel or a conference center. And at the end of the day, the designation, in my opinion, is moot, because the long-term effect and impact will be the same as a 64-plus unit hotel in our rural community, no matter what you call it. So I ask you, the board, and thank you again for your volunteering of time, to consider and act upon a choice that considers a regenerative future that does not look at short-term gains, but the longevity and well-being of this precious community and the ecosystems that we all tend and protect.
Thank you. Those that are in support of the 6 cents, yep, come on. Yeah, you can just take it out. That works.
Too short. Hi, my name is Josh Sager, resident of the village of Rhinebeck. My wife and I moved up here 2.5 years ago for many of the same reasons that many of you are opposed to this: the beauty, the peaceful nature of this incredible landscape we get to call our home. I work in real estate development in the city. I was part of the process with Amazon trying to come to Long Island City, and I see some parallels here. And I just think that many of the reasons why we moved here, why we all love this area, why 6 cents chose this area shouldn't be lost. And we shouldn't lose out on the economic opportunity that it creates. I wasn't really planning on speaking, but as one of the younger faces in the room, I just wanted to say that, you know, the future development and growth of this area in a positive way is something that my wife and I, as we raise kids here, we want to make sure Dutchess County is healthy economically, providing opportunities, providing jobs. I think that there's a way for this to be equitable. And everything that, you know, the voices in this room today, the points people are bringing up, hopefully that gets back to 6 senses, and this is built in a way that, you know, it is equitable. And I just wanted to just make that point, that, you know, as maybe some of the younger generation here who wants to spend the rest of their life in Dutchess County, we love it here, and we want to see it healthy and growing and vibrant. And I think one of the previous speakers mentioned, you know, who's going to be staying here. Well, the people that are going to be staying there are going to be the people eating at our restaurants, keeping our restaurants healthy. They're going to be spending money at our shops, in our stores. It really does trickle down, not to sound like a politician, but it's just something overall in the long-term health of the community. There are concerns, of course. I don't live next door, so I can't speak to that, and I understand the noise and environmental concerns. But I'm hoping that these concerns are also heard by Six Senses, and this is done in a way that everybody can come to agreement, and it's equitable and healthy for Dutchess County and this neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
This is Adam Dykesel. I've been a homeowner in the town of Clinton for 30 years, and I am not an immediate neighbor of this property, but I can give some insight as to what it is like being an immediate neighbor of a big institution that takes in a lot of guests, because my wife and I live about 400 feet from Omega's parking lot, directly across Long Pond. And we love Omega. They're good neighbors. We have worked very hard, and they have worked very hard to be good neighbors. But the Omega Institute is a nonprofit institution. It is a mission-driven institution, and it has proven itself as intending to be good neighbors to this town and to its immediate neighbors. With all that said, living close to an institution like that brings in hundreds of guests is not nothing. It's a lot. It brings light, it brings noise, it brings waste that has to be dealt with, it brings these water problems. I can pick up the phone and call Skip Backus, who many of you know, and he will respond. I don't think these people on Coyote Ridge Road and Browns Pond Road are going to be able to pick up the phone and call the CEO of Six Senses, as much as he might be a very nice man, or the CEO of the Intercontinental Hotel Group and say, you know, it's after 10 o'clock and we're trying to go to sleep. Could you turn down the music? I can do that. They will not be able to do that. But I want to bring the conversation back to one about the zoning law, because the attorneys for Six Senses made a big point about the fact that the conference center law changed in 2021, and it did. The definition was expanded. We've already heard about how irregular that process was, but the law is the law. What they don't point out is that the law is not just the first sentence or the first two sentences that define what a conference center is. The law is a whole set of regulations about how a conference center operates. And I believe it is the responsibility of this board not just to decide whether their proposal fits the definition, but whether what they propose can be operated in a way that is compliant with those regulations. Now, those regulations say that there was the old definition, which involved events, and there's the new definition, which is this recreation and health thing. But if you read down, as I know the board members do, if you read the whole law, in paragraph 12, it says that lodging facilities shall be for use of attendees at events and employees of the conference center only. And in paragraph 11, it says the same for food and drink and recreational facilities. They're solely for attendees of events. Events is capitalized. Events is defined in the first paragraph, which is the old definition of what a conference center is. The definition that sort of aligns with the English language of what we all understand a conference center to be. And it says an events, capital E, events used for business or professional conferences and seminars. That's the definition of events in this law, in the town of Clinton law. It doesn't say beekeeping hobbies. It doesn't say stargazing. It doesn't say learning how to lose weight or learning how to create edible landscapes. It says business or professional conferences and seminars. That is not what they are doing. Their proposed usage is not compliant with it might be compliant with the definition, but they are proposing to manage it in a way that does not comply with the regulations that are part of Town of Clinton law. And I would ask this board to take that into consideration, accept the appeal, deny the application, because what they are doing is not legal by the plain language of town law. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, are there any that are in support of 6 cents that would like to speak? Okay, come on up.
My name is James Beichman. I live on Browns Pond Road and have had property since 2007. And I want to just address a very practical issue, which is related to the scale of this entire plan. The scale requires, by their computation, which was done, by the way, based on hotels they use as the basis for the calculation, of 18,000 gallons of water a day by this facility. Well, we on Browns Pond Road, my neighbors and I, we are at an elevation of 500 feet, several hundred feet higher than the planned development. And again, during the dry weather, when we had a near drought 2 years ago, nobody really ran out of water, but everybody's water got dirty, more sand and silt, okay? And these folks are planning to take 18,000 gallons of water a day out of the aquifer. And they say they have done some testing with 1 day's testing and looked at refill times within 24 hours for the 1 day's testing. But that's not every day 18,000 gallons during dry weather. So this is a scale issue. Whether it's and the scale is based by their own calculations on hotels. That's what they call it in the document that they presented to the planning board just the other day. So I hope these kind of scale issues go into your decision making. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
I keep looking over at our esteemed colleagues from the planning board, who are the ones who would most directly address a lot of these concerns, and I know are thinking very hard about it.
Any other comments? Okay. We'll get to hear from you again.
Thank you, Dal Lamagna. So one of my concerns is it's not going to work. They're going to build this whole thing, and then at the end, as Ramit thought he was going to do, they're going to be able to be profitable. Omega is a nonprofit. It needs donations to sustain its operations, and we would say Omega is very successful. Will they be able to get people to show up here day in and day out in the winter and make a profit? So I think actually we would be helping them to not have them do that and save them trouble and that effort.
That's very, very kind of you.
64 homes that they will build. You know, I guess we'll put the kitchen, the stove, and the refrigerator into the cabins, and then we'll have 64 homes that we can maybe, they could maybe, looking for an out for them, maybe they could sell those off as homes for people, a place to go.
I appreciate your thoughtfulness. All right, and any other comments? Yes, please.
I just make a quick comment because I know it's late. And I'm sensitive to all the needs of the neighbors. I think everybody's voice should be heard and considered, because the only thing we really have here in the Hudson Valley is the quality of life here. But as someone that grew up in the area a long time ago, in the 70s and 80s, We used to have IBM in this area that employed a lot of people and provided a lot of middle-class jobs. And we really don't have that anymore. All we have is like the ability to have a place that people want to come. So I think it's really amazing that people want to come to the area. There are places in the region that have done this rather successfully. Auberge is, it was just open for a year in New Paltz. It's right on a residential street. It's very low lit. It's, it's got neighbors right around it. I'd be curious to see if they're happy or unhappy with the facility. I don't know, but I've eaten there and it's been very successful. And also, obviously, Innis across the river has done really well. And these are just, pretty, low footprint facilities that were in 200 acres. Here we have an existing buildings and facility that something is probably going to get done with. It would be great if it could get done in a way that, is okay with the people that live around it and is sensitive. Obviously, nobody wants people wandering into their backyards at night. But I also think that it is important to have a vibrant economic area.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public at this time?
Second comment before, so here I am.
All right.
So, that Mr. Newman received monies from the developer is a very bad image. I'm not saying it was bribery, but it's a very bad image. I would like the board to subpoena Mr. Newman's bank records and find out how much money he was paid, to make sure, so we can clear up that bad look, so everything will look good. I'm sure they didn't do anything untoward, but once we have his bank records and see how much money he was paid by the Saudis, we'll know whether it was untoward. So please consider referring this to the state's Attorney General's office for the same reasons. I will.
Okay. Mr. Raplansky.
Sorry, I know that you've been here a long time.
Yeah, you feel free to take that out. You can take it out, sit down, whatever makes you feel comfortable. Yeah. You do. That way people that aren't here can hear you.
Just a few things that came to mind while people were speaking. This application was, the application before the planning board was referred to the Dutchess County Planning under what we call a 239M referral. So it's my understanding that they are going to do another set of comments. But they had one comment, and the comment was, this is too big. It should be scaled down. I want you to take notice of that fact that Dutchess Planning does this also. We really question, we the non-conforming expired years ago, as we've demonstrated, we think, in our papers and through testimony. Certainly during that period, we know this is a violation, we're accused. Gentleman who commented on the law was just spot on. If you read the event law, you'll see it was not designed for what they are proposing, even in its present state, what they're proposing. The supplementary regulations for conference centers regulates the maximum number of events per day at the conference center. It's set by the planning board, and the planning board will be conditioning those events. Does that sound like a conference center? The hours of operation for the conference center shall be 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. on Sunday through Thursday, and 10 a.m. to 12 midnight on Friday and Saturday. It's highly regulated events, not what they are proposing here, this wellness spa hotel.
We want a company coming here and telling us what to do. And just doing it for their own reasons. We have to keep the airspace open. This is what people come to Rhinebeck to do. And as far if let them go to Kingston, they would be better off there, and then they can have a bus come in and go to the nice restaurants here. Because last I looked, it's hard to get a reservation at Cinnamon. But thanks a lot very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Just one question.
You can come on up here.
Interrupted, Robin.
If we emailed in commentary,
What's your name?
Dan,
Yeah, email,
then
yeah.
it's on the record.
Yep,
I don't need
yep,
to.
yep.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Dan what?
Just tell them until the public hearing closes, they'll be able to.
Yeah. Yeah, just as a reminder, anyone that has any information, feel free to email us, because once we close the public hearing, we'll stop taking the comments, but that's not our intention to at this time. So when you leave here, you think of something, email us, we'll be able to receive it. Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. We are actually going to ask that you consider closing the hearing and keeping open a written comment period so that we can submit rebuttals, you can get your written correspondence. But you heard a lot tonight, and I don't think you need to have another hearing because you didn't really hear anything about conference centers. You heard a lot about the prior owners. They were not liked, apparently. Not an issue before your board. You heard that people are concerned about water, traffic. Again, not an issue for your board. Unfortunately, it will be an issue for Mr. Thomas over there, but not an issue for you. We heard that people don't like for-profit businesses. Again, not before your board tonight. So I'm not sure how much more we need to continue with the public hearing. We'd like to submit final comments and move on with the decision. What you did not hear tonight, really, is any evidence overcoming MCEI's determination. We heard lots of words like clearly, of course, common sense, but no real analysis of the zoning law. There was an issue raised about a big E versus a little e. We're going to look into that, but I do want to remind you that anytime there's ambiguity in the zoning law, if the drafters made a little mistake or an error, you read that in favor of the landowner. In America, you have property rights unless they're taken away. So unless there was some intention to take those rights away intentionally, you give the landowner the benefit of the doubt. And I will provide some case law on that, and I'm sure Mr. Egan will as well. We also want to talk a little bit about the burden of proof. We will address it in our papers, but the burden for a nonconforming use is one thing, but here the opposition is appealing a determination, and that's their burden to determine that the determination was wrong. You can't just say that someone didn't do something right and then say, well, we don't know anything about it, so good luck. You know, they have an obligation to carry that burden. So I want to just address one more thing. A lot of talk about the standards used in the planning board review of the application. Again, I know it's not before you, but you're hearing these things. Yes, national standards, state standards don't use town of Clinton zoning law terms. You're not going to find a water withdrawal classification for a dude ranch or for, conference center as defined by the town of Clinton. All of these terms are, national classifications, engineering classifications with their own definitions. So it's not really relevant that for purposes of traffic, they relied on a national traffic standard for a particular category. That's not zoning talk, that's engineering talk, and I don't even understand engineering talk. What else? I guess we don't want you to make an absurd interpretation. We want you to make a reasoned, rational interpretation. We hope that we've given you all the evidence that you need tonight, and we ask that you close the hearing. Thank you, with 2 weeks for rebuttals.
Thank you for the comments. Okay, final ask for this evening. Is there anyone else to share any comments at this time? All right, any comments from the board? Charlie, you want to? Do you want to just turn?
Sorry. There's a lot for us to consider here. I'm personally in favor of leaving the public hearing open. If at 2 weeks from now we get a whole bunch of written stuff, then we only have 2 weeks to work up our decision, and that's so I know it's unfortunate, but basically leaving the public hearing open means that we would then close it at the March meeting, and then presumably have, then we, yeah, right, but I mean, it would be my hope that at the April, we're in February. This month is really drug on. My grandson was born on Leap Day, so I'm waiting for the, so that at the April meeting, we would hopefully be able to, but that gives us a full month to consider an enormous record of both public comments and all the documents going back almost 2 decades on this property. So we have a lot to do, and I've really appreciated all of the comments and the spirit in which they were given. There was a lot of honest opinion here tonight, and I personally appreciated it. So.
Any other comments from the board? Are we good keeping this, tabling this for now and then revisiting?
I am.
Yeah. All right, I'd like to make a motion to table this at this time. All in favor? Okay, so moved. The public hearing is open for this, so at the next meeting, we will also be taking public comment. Again, if you email anything to Arlene, she gets it, she distributes it to all of us, and we're able to see it. So if there's something that you have or that you weren't able to say this evening, don't feel like your voice is not heard, please send it to us. And again, I'll echo what Charlie said. Thank you all for your comments. This is why we're here. This is our community. We care about it. We want to know how you feel. We want to know your thoughts, and you've shared it with us, so we sincerely appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Wait,
yes.
Are all of the public comments going to be posted for review? Or can we get a copy?
You can definitely come get a copy. We're going to make this, and we're going to talk about that this evening too. So.
I'm not going to send another letter to the neighbors, so it's going to be on the March.
Yeah, when it's open, so just plan on, you're welcome to come.
What's the date and time?
March, hold on, I'm going to tell you the date.
Just let everyone know.
We are going to tell you the date. March, 28th.
Yes, March 28th. We're going to do 6:30 again? March 28th at 6:30.